point of order here. What I'm going to do, I think, is divide this, we have one agenda here, but I want to divide it into two separate meetings. Call to order, do the meeting, have the, whatever it is, and then close that, adjourn, and then open the Deer Advisory. I want to keep them separate, okay? So that one thing doesn't flow into the other. So we'll open up the
Hi, Lynn.
Road Advisory Committee.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, come on up. We have a seat for you right over
Oh,
here.
come on up
Was
here.
it bad? Nice to see you.
You have to go back a room to get here.
It's okay.
There you go. How do you do for them, John?
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no.
Hi, I'm Jeff.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Lynn.
All right,
Sorry.
the Road Advisory Committee opened the meeting of November 12th. We have no minutes. The minutes weren't done. We're going to postpone approving the minutes from our last meeting. We're going to approve those minutes in the next meeting.
Okay.
So we don't have those. So we do have a quorum, of course, we have a full slate here. So what we want to do, what the purpose of today's meeting is to now start, we've got all the information from the presentation, from the fact-finding, we've got all that done. That phase is done. Phase 2 now is to digest that information and find out what we can expect from the things that we found out, ramifications of certain choices perhaps, financial stuff, et cetera. So the first person, I think the first is, we're going to get some answers to the question we posed last week. Jason Tice, thanks for joining us. I think what we had certain, I have it here someplace, I have mine. Oh, okay, we had certain questions we wanted to ask. And do you have you want to just present, do you have something you want to present to us, or should we just ask a question? What do you want to do?
I don't have anything to present, so
Okay.
I was given a copy of some questions, but
Okay.
some were
Well, why don't
kind
we start there then?
of vague, so
Right.
I'm not quite sure exactly. You'll have to help guide me on.
So
on what you're
Jason,
looking for.
just, we have a couple of new members. Will you just introduce yourself and your role here, please?
Sure. Finance director for the township. I handle all the accounting and inflow of money, outflow, and been here 18 years.
You did a great presentation right in the beginning when we first started this, and got some good information out of that. That was really
Great.
good. But now that we know some things, and from your stuff, from others, we'd like to know, perhaps from someone who knows what they're doing, some of the ramifications or some of the things that would happen, or what's the next step in financials? And you got the questions. You want to just start with those, and then maybe we'll have more.
Yeah, so there was a question about what would be the consequences if the township were to incorporate as a city, and I guess my first thought when I read that was I won't be able to answer all of them. I think a good portion of those should be directed to an attorney, because there's all sorts of legal consequences. Also, maybe our director of public works, from the standpoint of how that would affect the road department, its organization, structure, whether we even have the capacity to house those trucks and all the excess of that. So, but mainly from a financial standpoint, incorporating as a city, we then are taking on all of the responsibilities and infrastructure that we currently don't have to take on. So my concern there is I have yet to find or be aware of a city, a non-township, that has enough funding, getting the PA $51 and other sources that, I never am talking to a peer or another finance person at another community, and they say, "Oh, this is great having our own roads, and we have enough funding to get them." So, as you're going through, this committee and evaluating things, I think that's important to reflect back on. Is you want to solve a problem, and that problem is we don't have enough funding and sources and options to address the local roads here and we don't get enough support from the external parties. But there's a good chance by fixing that problem, potentially by becoming a city, you take on 10 other problems in that course. So that's just my take on it, just from a financially view. Yeah.
Just a question, if, from a financial point of view, obviously, the other things, we're gonna have other people from other departments, police, fire, everybody, you know. But if Public Act 51, which prohibits funds coming directly for roads, directly to the township, if that was done away with, in other words, we become a city, then we could get money from the state directly. Number one, in that case, how would that be beneficial? Would we see a benefit from that financially?
It's a tough to answer because I mean, I spent a little bit of time looking at other communities' audits. They're all online, either on their own websites, and there's a state website that has them all out there. So anyone can go look up any community, city, village, township, and look at their audit. And so I tried looking at some cities to see like if I could determine what type of funding they're getting and how does that compare to what they're spending. And what you'll notice is in the cities, and I don't quite know the difference between them because I've only been here at the township, but most of them have a major streets fund and then a local streets fund. And then they'll show that there's state sources of revenue coming into each of those. Typically, most of that revenue is going in their major streets fund, and then you can see how much they're spending. It's not in a lot of detail, but at least when I went through briefly that exercise, they're all spending more on the expense side than is being shown in that state sources of funding revenue, and typically most of them are then having to supplement from somewhere else, whether it's a transfer in from their general fund or special assessment revenue or some other, yeah.
So in your opinion, has any township been converted from a city to a city that's been advantageous to how it handles and budgets roads?
I have not come across that, I've not.
In the history of the world?
Big question, Jason.
I think you can say, yeah, because
Yeah,
I think it's important that we're dilly-dallying around on something that in the element of reality, it's just not, unless they change a lot of things about Public Act 51, which you and I can't determine, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, you can say that. Even a finance guy can say this doesn't make any sense.
Financially, it does not make sense.
Right.
I mean, and I've tried to be an open mind and do some research and look, just so I'm not missing something. And I have not come across or heard of any other township that has gone through this exercise. And I haven't heard of anyone exploring it. But in one of my answers comments I left to myself was, I mean, there's nothing wrong with hiring a consultant, an auditing firm. I'm sure the consulting arm of Plant Moran handles these types of things. That may have actually been who we used in the early 2000s when we went through this exercise. They'd be able to not just look at the financial side, but the whole gamut of what would happen if Bloomfield Township, all the pros and cons of going to a city. I mean, it's everything from your current elected positions would be dissolved, they'd be replaced by now a commission instead of a board, to taking on all the infrastructure and of course all the financial ups and downs and pros and cons of that. I mean, that could be a path to recommend to the board at some point to, you know, if you still wanted to go down that, you could look into it, and obviously there'd be a cost to have somebody do that exercise.
Thanks for your pointed answer.
Jason, do you have from talking with colleagues, any sense of how much the township says, yes, we're gonna do it? How much does that cost? You've got to rebrand things, you've got to, I mean, lots of other things that have to go on.
Yeah, I have no idea. Like I said, because I don't know of anyone that's ever done it.
Okay.
Um,
It can't be cheap.
I would expect not, but whether that's, six figures, seven, like, I have no idea what that would be.
Thank you.
In your research, did you identify under Public Act 51 how that allocation goes to cities? And if we were a city by some, how much money would we get from the road fund?
I have not been able to determine that. But for example, again, in cities' audits, on their statements, they don't call it Act 51 money on their statements. They just, they categorize it per accounting principles. So like I said, like City of Birmingham has a major streets fund and a local streets fund, and then they'll say state sources, grants, investment income. So my guess is there's a state sources revenue, and for their major streets fund, they got $1.9 million. Doesn't seem like a lot. I know they're quite different in size from us, and maybe the downtown and all that. And then for they got a few $100,000 of investment income, so $2.2 million for that year. But then they spent over $5 million on categorized as public works, which would be roads. So not a great year for them. On that's just one example. Another one I pulled was City of Sterling Heights. State sources, they got for major streets 11.8 million, but then they spent over 12 and a half, 13. That doesn't paint the whole picture, but just kind of gives you an idea of the differences. And obviously, we wouldn't know from their board or commission standpoint, spending in City of Birmingham's getting that amount and then spending more than double of it. Was that planned? Was that intended? Did that catch them up? Are they still way behind in their infrastructure? All of those questions we can't really get from just looking at their audits.
But you didn't look at the Public Act 51 formula for cities.
No, I have not.
You didn't do that.
On the revenue side, though, let me ask you this. Is there we've had some controversy here about the amount of millage that cities can the maximum millage a city can use and a township. Something like the townships can only keep 10 mills or something, and cities 20.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So in our case, how would that? Do you have any idea how that would impact us?
I mean, just in general, not knowing what a new city commission would do with that extra, if you will, 10 mills. I mean, I could see politically some people being extremely against it and saying, we've survived this long on 10. I'm not going to increase the taxes to the residents. I believe you still have to get those passed. Again, I'm not an expert on city millages, but I guess if you were to convert to a city for that purpose and then put it out to a vote and they say, yeah, we'll willingly pass 3, 4, 5 mills specifically for roads.
Well, the only thing is that the last time I did this, I did it a few times. I've researched, I looked and got the millage from Birmingham. I didn't use Birmingham as an
Okay.
example. Birmingham compared to Township. The Birmingham millage was only at certain times less than a mill more than Bloomfield Township. Sometimes it's a little more than a mill. So it's not a huge difference what they're milling totally, what they're taxing the millages. Now, there are other reasons why they perhaps can get more money. Houses are close together, value is higher maybe, I don't know. But they also have parks and they have other things that they spend money on that we might not. So the point is that we're not necessarily have to mill more. We're going to have to send out more millage to charge our residents more. But there's different allocation, I think. And I don't know the answer to that. That's what I'm trying to find out. So could that be true? Is it just a different way of allocating, or they can retain more rather than sending more off to the state, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, what takes up the majority of, about 65% of our millage, about 6.5 mils, is public safety. So, you're only, if you were to say, you know, we can't touch that, you're only down to your remaining 35%, which you have general, which has to cover all of the administrative, clerks, assessing, accounting, HR, all those things that have to support your other bigger departments. And we have some special revenue millages to support Senior Service Center that was built in 2009. Another popular one when it comes up for renewal every 5 years is the Safety Path Construction Program. People seem to like to have that continue on. So, I mean, internally, we've discussed that every time a millage is up for renewal of whether there's another way to restructure. And actually, because we had a little bit of room in our cap a couple of years ago, we increased the senior center millage by 10 cents, going from 23 cents to 33. And they needed that to continue operating. They were at deficits for a few years. So it is something we look at, and I don't know if I'm answering your exact question, but we assess it.
I think it's something
and
we need to look at it. I think that's what you said, and I agree. I think that's correct. It seems to me that if Birmingham, for instance, is at, I haven't got it in front of me, I have it here someplace, it was at like 51 mils or something. I shouldn't even give a number, but the millage was so close to what we're milling. So how can they then, when they do their roads like they did Arlington and Shirley, for instance, they had an SAT, but it was way less than what we have to charge.
Yeah, but what's their average property value versus ours?
I see, well, I said, that's what I
I mean, it's
said.
gotta
Their
be- it's
property
gotta
values
be
are higher, but
higher
they
than ours,
also
judging by how much
have
a
parks.
bungalow
They have parks we don't have. They have an ice arena we don't have. They have other things that they spend money on that we don't have to do. We don't have. So, but we need to look at it. I mean, I don't have an answer. I don't know. I'd like to find out. So, okay.
So
Anyway.
Jason, you're familiar, I'm sure, with the controversy over, that's why we're here, right? The roads, the SADs, and how this has all gone. And Jeff is mentioning Arlington and Shirley. You're familiar with those streets probably in Birmingham, and they were recently redone. And the amount that he's referencing, they were redone, was precipitously less than the cost to the streets that were done, I mean, factually, regardless of scope. So when the residents come forward to question what's going on, and that has led to this process, which has been a great process, they're searching for answers, which leads to all of these questions of you about how can we do this better? Because they have facts on road reconstruction versus road reconstruction in the township, and no one really understands why there would be such a difference. So you're aware of, does that resonate? Are you aware of all that?
Yeah, I don't know that I can answer any more than what you've probably already gotten answers from our Director of Public Works.
We
and-
don't have answers
Okay.
as a community. That's why we're here.
I mean, that I would recommend circling back then to our Director of Public Works and maybe at the same time our engineering director, because I'm seeing the SCDs at a later stage in their life, whereas they're more in the front end and they work with the contractors that then help to determine whether you can get away with just an overlay or a complete reconstruction. And I know from what I heard, the ones in the village had to go a lot deeper than other ones and had maybe a different scope.
But regardless of that, the scope wasn't that different on Arlington and Shirley.
Right, it wasn't.
I mean, it was very analogous, so I'm upstream from that. I appreciate your comment and saying we could ask people on Mike's team that are subject matter experts about the project design, but I'm
Yeah.
above that saying, that's why there are these questions, right? Trying to understand the comparative nature and where the funds come from to reduce the cost to the citizenry for roads.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate
All right, so, okay, do you want to continue with those, or how do you want? I don't-
Well, there was I wasn't sure where this question was going. There was what impact would the loss of constitutional
Yeah.
funding have? Like, I guess what We're not at, as far as I'm aware, there's nothing saying we're at any risk of that. Like, what scenario would that be that we would have a loss in
I
constitutional?
think, Mike, you've talked about that many times. You wanna-
Yeah. Under the new road bill passed in Lansing, they reduced some of our constitutional funding.
Oh, the statutory.
Was it
Yeah,
statutory or
yeah.
constitutional?
Okay, yeah, statutory.
Okay.
At least that was my take on it. That loss was about $300,000. I mean, our total revenue sharing annually is about 4.8 million. That's constitutional and statutory. So, I mean, 300,000 is not a small number. Now, they're giving us a little, 40,000 back, but it has things attached to it that say we have to spend it specifically on things related to public safety, and so you could say it's a little less than that, 250, 260, but I guess when with that reduction, because the road fund we currently have, its operations are funded significantly beyond the millage, the road millage. We do a very large transfer in from the general fund. So you could argue that we're able to give that general fund money to the road fund because we have things like state revenue sharing and the general millages. So I guess in short, I would say that could impact the general fund's ability by general fund receiving less, 300,000, 250,000 less, might not be in the best position to give as much to the road fund. So you have a trickle down effect that could happen to where we may have to cut certain things in the road fund, which typically when we get to that point, the first thing we have to look at is what are we paying the paving contractors, which are the ones that are doing the bigger size work that our internal labor can't handle, which they typically just do the patching and snow removal during the winter. And the public safety fund, and I think in my earlier presentation in the year, I talk about public safety fund, it also gets a very sizable transfer from the general fund, so they can get affected by that loss in revenue sharing as well. And so they're kind of both vying for that support from the general fund. And there was a question, last one I had was the debt ratio of the township with all of this SAD debt. Every time we have a credit rating call with Standard & Poor's, and once in a while we have one with Moody's, they do bring it up. Every call we have, they bring up our debt ratio is getting worse and worse each year that we talk to them with every bond issue. But they will not give us a number, like what is their threshold. They won't tell us, because there's all sorts of factors. I'm sure it's probably not a hard number. They factor in everything when they talk to you. But we're almost at a third of our outstanding principal right now is from these road SADs, since we started doing them 12, 13, 14 years ago. So each one is increasing that debt ratio and making it a little worse. So I don't have a solid answer of what that magic number is that could possibly cause the township to be downgraded, which nobody wants to see that happen. We got that AAA, and then the hardest thing is now to keep the AAA.
So even though there's an SAD has a guaranteed revenue source to pay that debt,
Yeah.
that fact, just the size of it factors?
Yeah.
The amount, like you said a third of the, so that even though you know it's guaranteed you're gonna get that money, it's not like you have a debt that you may not be able to pay. So you have more debt, you have too much, you haven't got the income to pay it, so then your credit rating drops. But you have a guaranteed income for that debt. It's gonna be paid, it's not like
Yep.
it's gonna be defaulted.
Yeah, and in our calls with them, we've had those exact words and conversations, and they just go back to, well, our approved methodology is this, and we have to look at it, and they basically look at that year and what's due that year, and they don't look at that revenue stream that's been dedicated to that.
Okay, so.
But they haven't changed their rating. So they obviously understand spiritually that they could do that.
Well, it could come to a point where they could say, no, now we're at the point where, no,
Well,
now
they
you're too
they could
much.
be, and then.
However,
And then the Jehovah will come in and tell them what to do, but, they haven't reached that yet.
if we get to a point where they say, any more debt you can't take on, so no more SADs, then what happens? Then the roads in the subdivisions, they're getting worse as it is now. And we saw that on the Pacer report, how much of the township roads need to be replaced. So if it comes to a point and say, no more SADs, you can't take on any more debt. So what happens? You don't fix the roads at all, nothing,
Then
there's
it's
no funds
supposed to
for
the
it.
county at that point, and it's a 10-year SAD instead of 15.
Yeah,
Instead
I
of
mean,
Bloomfield Township being
can do-
involved in the financial rectification of it, it's the homeowner and the road commission of Oakland County.
Today, people have options, the township or the road commission. The township option could be eliminated, so they would have to go to the county.
Oh, I
There
see.
you go.
Yeah, so then it'd be more expensive, because they're
Correct.
shorter span and higher interest rate.
Yes.
yeah, I live in Commerce, and so the only option we would have if my neighborhood wanted to do that was we'd go through the county. Like Commerce doesn't have its own program, so whatever the county's terms are, their contractor, it would all be done through them. And so the Commerce would take on no debt onto their books and no processing and.
So the point is that it would get more expensive. It wouldn't be $60,000, as Mindy has told us in her subdivision. It'd be $70,000 or more. I mean, it's already at a point where you can't, it's untenable. It's just, you can't, it doesn't work. So if we can't take on any more debt, SADs through the township, if that's the way we have to go, that would get more expensive.
I got a couple.
I don't know if it would, yeah, I can't answer that.
Okay.
I got
All
a
right.
couple questions on the bond. We're AAA rated today. What's our rate? It's a AAA enterprise.
Gosh, I'm trying to think of the last village SAD we approved. It was a great rate, around three something, and I'm just spitballing. It was a really good rate, lower than what most of the other bond sales that occurred this year came in at.
And if you took on more debt and they decided to downgrade you to a AA versus a AAA, how many basis points difference would that result in?
There's not a exact science to that either, and we've asked our bond municipal advisors that each year when we go through these exercises, and they can never give us a solid answer because it all comes down to the methodology of S&P or Moody's, whoever's rating you, the market at that exact time. But I know when we've pressed them on it, they'll say it could be anywhere from 25 to 75 basis points.
For just one downgrade?
Yeah.
Double A plus or something.
If one of these agencies, rating agencies, gets anxious, do they give you a warning and say you've got to get your act together in 6 months or a year? Or do they just change the rating?
Not outright. They will, if you read their, they don't call it a press release, but when they release something every time they finished rating somebody, and there'll be an outlook. They'll talk about why they rated it the way they did, and then they'll do an outlook of things that could become a problem or could be a factor in future ratings. And so that's where they'll revisit the township's debt ratio, which doesn't include, they aren't just looking at the bond debt we have and the SAD debt, but they also roll in there our legacy debt of our benefits that have been closed. And so they always bring that up. They bring up
Sure.
the overall bond debt ratio and anything else. But township really, in all the other aspects, is pretty financially sound. So there's not a whole lot that they bring up besides the debt.
So it's a sort of a veiled warning.
Yeah,
Okay.
without getting
Unfortunately,
specifics of,
At five, we have to split this up into the other one too, so we have to wrap it up, but let me just, to wrap it up, do you think with just the changes in the financing in Lansing and the budget and all that, without major, a change in the culture, a change in the way we do things, do you think that we could recommend and solve this problem with the finances that are coming out of Lansing right now?
no.
Okay, so I knew that was the answer. So we have to think larger, don't we? We have to make major changes, whether it's, and I'm not suggesting it, we don't know, getting rid of PA 51, maybe not, I don't know. Really, that's a major change. Becoming a city, that's a major change. Or or other things, other than just where we're moving right now. And you think that is what has to happen? Not those particular things, but major changes.
100%, because I mean, this problem you're trying to address is not a Bloomfield Township only problem. It goes way, it's a state problem, every township problem. I mean, I would say it's similar to property tax reform. We have all sorts of issues with property taxes, and nothing will ever happen because you need everyone in Lansing to get on board with it, and nobody wants to tackle it.
Yeah, okay. I'm sorry.
One more quick one. Does the township today, as we sit here today, do they plan on selling any more bonds in the next couple of years? Or you see taking on
Yeah,
any more debt?
there's still interest, even at those costs. With the assessing and engineering are still seeing petitions, neighborhoods wanting, at least showing interest.
No, I'm not talking about SADs, I'm just talking the overall operation of, do you see incurring any more debt, not for roads, but for everything else?
Possibly in water and sewer. Those come up every now and then for a big project. But outside of that, I'm not aware of anything.
And what do you see of the next 3 to 5 years as the pay down on the bond obligations versus today in total outstandings?
If we stopped issuing new debt, it would come down pretty rapidly. But the big point, big year to keep in mind is 2032. We have 2 really large debts that'll be completely paid off in that year, and that's the pension obligation bond debt and the township campus bond debt.
Could you provide us, the committee, with how that debt gets retired over between now and 2032, so we can
Yep.
see how that capacity comes down? There may be, so that'd be helpful to see that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Jim,
All right.
I have to, go on the record and say something about this.
Go ahead.
I just have to, I heard what you just said, Jason. There is not majority interest in the 5th section in Bloomfield Village to go ahead with the project. I just have to go on the record and say that. There's tremendous communication with the residents of that section of the village to not sign the petition as it currently stands. And there were residents that were going to come today to speak to this issue, and they could not be here because of business commitments. So I just want to say that on the record to represent people that live in Bloomfield Village, because I know this is factually true.
Understood, and
Okay.
I wasn't referring to that one. I know that
I
one is.
wasn't
yeah.
saying this to you, I was just getting it on the record. It
Yeah.
was just, thank
Understood.
you.
Okay.
I just had to.
All right,
clarify.
thank you so much.
Okay.
We've learned, we got another perspective, but what we need to do is move on, but I'd like to have, if anybody, public comment on roads. This is the opportunity to come to you have to come there, name and address, 3 minutes, and, welcome to you to give your comments.
Okay, thanks. And does that mean then you're gonna go to the deer? You're gonna talk about deer?
Yes, we're gonna
for the
adjourn
rest
this
of the
meeting and then go to deer. It's something other than that.
But is this committee both deer and
Yes.
roads?
Yes, it is.
I did not know that. In the township, don't count this for my minutes. In the township board meeting, you said you were gonna create a special deer committee. You had a conversation, Mike, with Martin.
Yep.
Special deer committee, and I thought you were gonna ask for new people to be on the deer committee.
Yeah. we
So
did.
you did?
Yeah, here in Lynn.
I never saw any notices.
Yeah, and then we discussed whether through a few meetings, if their committee would take on the issue.
Okay, the public, I'm very watchful. It's not coming through.
Okay.
It's not coming through. So I had a few people that were interested in that deer committee.
Okay.
I thought it was gonna be separate. I thought I would see a note. I'm the president of my neighborhood. I'll give you my name in a minute. Anyway, I feel like that is a little not right. This is different committee. Roads are roads, deer are deer.
And let's hope the two never meet.
Well, and they do, I know, but my 2 cents. Jeanette Phillips, 6385 Hills Drive, down by Maple Gilbert Lake Road, kind of. I'm the president of our little neighborhood association also. I just want to give you an idea that has been in my mind for years, and it's this. I don't have any of the data. I'm happily, well, not that happily. I can do some of the legwork, but I think the township staff, especially the finance director, could do this in a minute. But I would like you to ask them what the annual regular increase in property taxes is over time as our properties, increase the value. What is that percentage? 5%, 10% a year? And hold that. There are expenses that increase too, I get that, but what's that number? Then ask them to give you the reports on all new homes or new sales, past 5 years. This property tax, they bump up, they sell the property from the old Prop A thing to the new. You enjoy this huge increase in property tax revenue and how that mixes into the total revenue for the township. Also, when you build a new construction home, we're having that experience on Hills Drive, it chews up the road. So that increase, we sold a house for 500,000-ish, 700 maybe. They're asking 5 million now. It's a pending sale. That increase in property tax, that chunk of money that comes to the township, does not benefit the neighbors, and it should. So putting some of that increase in escrow to fix the roads, because the trucks chew the roads up, and ask the builders or the buyer of the new home to put money in escrow to repave their stretch. Some of those things alone could help us get to where we need to be to fix the roads in neighborhoods where these big new constructions are occurring, or houses are just like flipping 5 times the value.
So
Thank you.
let me
Okay.
cut in if you don't mind, but
No.
that's what Fred Nader, his whole argument is about, right?
Right.
Right.
And so we're starting to address that. But I talked to our assessor, and we can have him come back and go through the numbers she's asking for.
Yeah.
But I did ask him, with all the new constructions, the turnover,
Right.
what's it adding to our bottom line? I said about 3%. And then if you look at your mills, you're gonna get a new tax statement here in, I think it's December, they send them out, December 10th. And they did a couple of copies so you could look at it. And if you look at the breakdown, okay, we're at about 9.96 to run the township. All the other mills that add up for the schools, the library, transit, a few other things in there. And then within our mills, you'll see, and Jason discussed it, with the breakdown of, was it 40%, Jason, goes to public safety?
No, about
65%.
65%. So of all the mills that we collect, 65%
Right,
goes to
but-
public safety.
But my point is, you have a baseline, and then you have these blips. These blips, are nice. They're beautiful blips.
Your blips in the sense of new building?
Yes,
And that added about 3% to our bottom line.
right, but that should be devoted, or 50% of that should be devoted to the roads. Should be devoted to fixing the problems that those new builds create on those streets, rather than dividing up the cost and is sad to every neighbor who, it's not our problem. It is our
Right.
problem, but it's not our fault.
Ms. Phillips,
Sorry.
we've discussed
Got
it,
it.
we're aware of it, we've discussed it. It's on the further consideration list, so thank you.
Yeah, that was one of the things, that could be one of the things as part of a solution. That is true. Okay,
Could be.
One other thing, before you get out of roads, one other thing.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's an email that I sent out late this afternoon, and it's at your desk. And what I would like to suggest to the committee is that we kind of think in advance of having people come and present to us, that we kind of think about the questions and things we want to ask and explore. So when the presenters are here, they know exactly and are prepared, and so we can really make these very efficient times to do that. So what I would suggest is the email that's at your place is that we think about that, and this is only a beginning. This is, add to the list, and then at our next meeting, we can then agree to what we want to do for the future presentation. So this is to get something started. And so and we'll make this as part of the minutes of the meeting, so it'll be,
Okay, that sounds official. That's great. All right, so what we want to do, I need a motion to adjourn the Road Advisory Committee. Somebody?
Move.
Moved? Support. Moved and support. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so that's adjourned. Now I'm going to open up the meeting, the Deer Advisory Committee meeting. And again, there's no minutes from when we talked about last time. So we have two things we want to do today. We have a presentation, let me get my glasses on here, from Nick Soley about, to help us understand if in fact there is a problem. We want to be sure we're on the right track. And then after that, we want to talk a bit about the mission statement of this, if we have time, but I don't think we will, so we may have to put that off until the next meeting, so. Officer Soley.
Awesome.
Sergeant,
So
or-
Sergeant Nick Soley,
Sergeant,
Bloomfield Township.
sorry.
No ego here. Bloomfield Township Police Department. I've been with the Township Police Department 10 years, law enforcement 12. Currently assigned to our community relations engagement role and public information. I'll be quick. I don't have a full presentation for you. I'm not going to stand here and tell you whether or not we have a problem. The community is telling us one way or another whether or not they believe it's a problem. I do have stats and statistics from what the police department's seeing. Surprisingly, the police department is the agency that handles our deer concerns here in the township, and I'm always available. So to piggyback off what Mr. Hockman said, if there's any questions you may have or anything coming down the line that I didn't cover today, I'm not an expert in deer, I'll admit that right now, but I am very good at research, and I can look up any police-related matters and get those answers to you, whether in memo or back in person at one of these meetings. So as I stand here today, year-to-date, the police department has handled 558 animal complaints, 461 of those involve deer, okay? So that means, and each thing I'm going to talk about is separate. So an animal complaint, an accident, a dead animal pickup, there's no overlap there. You're not going to get that animal complaint and then in the same, get an overlap number in a dead animal pickup, just so we're clear. So 461 incidents that just involve deer. That could be something like, there's a deer stuck on my fence, we go out there and we're able to free that deer and it goes on living its life. Or it could be something like, there's an angry deer in my backyard, can someone come take a look at it? We get there and address that situation. So 461 deer calls for service. That's to date, that's year to date, that's from January 1st until yesterday. So as it goes on, I talk about a little bit about dead animal pickups. So dead animal pickups, this is another one. I can't differentiate in the data what are deer and what are other animals. We do pick up other animals. Sometimes there's opossums or raccoons or things that we do pick up from the side of the road. But year-to-date dead animal pickup is at 446 dead animal pickups. If we look at a 5-year span, we do about 2,300 in those last 5 years of just dead animal pickups and disposal from our roadways or private residence. Could be in someone's backyard, front yard, ditches, anything like that. The big one that typically gets people's attention are car deer accidents. So I brought all those stats for you. The last 10 years, we've seen just about 750 car deer accidents. That's 10 years of data. To the best of my knowledge, I will say that our data in the last 5 years is probably a lot more trustworthy than it is 6 to 10 years ago, right? We have just better tracking, better way of categorizing these crashes. So the data is a little bit better the last 5 years, so I really honed in on those. Year to date, we've had 93 car deer accidents. Important to note that from January 1st to August, the end of August, we had 62 car deer accidents, which leaves us with 31 from September 1st, basically through November 11th. So we are seeing a majority of those car deer accidents happening more recently. That's not really a shock to us with beginning of November to mid-November being rut season and the deer moving. So very common for an area to see an uptick right now. That 93 number, however, is an increase from what we're pretty much used to in previous years, with an outlier of 2022. Again, I'm not a deer expert. I can't tell you why there were more in 2022, but we saw a gradual increase, 78 back in 2020, up to 93, and it gradually increased with just a really large jump in 2022, and then it went back down to 85, 90, 93. So it gradually grew, except for that 2022. Comparing those with our communities around us, I'm cautious in comparing because of the size of communities, the roads, the types of roads, right? We get a lot of car deer accidents on Telegraph, a lot of car deer accidents on Square Lake, that other communities don't have those types of roadways, right? We don't have a whole lot of dirt roads, other communities do. Not that we don't have any. Some communities have very open roads. We have roads that back up to woods and lakes when you look at places like Franklin between Walnut Lake and Long Lake. So hard comparison, but we'll do it anyways. 2024, very average compared to our other communities. Other communities being West Bloomfield, Farmington Hills, Waterford, Franklin, and Birmingham. 2023, we were below the rest of our communities. 2022 above. 2021 average. 2020, we were slightly above. So if you really look at it, we're right about average, but slightly higher for this year. Again, we see that increase right now in early November to mid-November. They're really running. You see them. That's when we start to get the calls. I know we kind of chuckle, but that's when we start to get the calls that maybe the deer are angry in the backyard type thing. They do get a little more aggressive, especially our does get a little more aggressive towards dogs. Nothing attacking people or anything like that. So that's kind of where we stand with the deer situation number-wise. I'll take any questions you have. Fortunately, I will say with our car deer accidents, we are very fortunate that we don't see many injuries and no serious injuries. And of course, knock on wood, again, that doesn't mean it couldn't happen at some of the speeds we have on our roads. Yes, sir.
Do you have any guesstimate, like how many deer vehicle DVCs there are that don't get reported to the police, that you may not be privy to?
They're not reported, so I don't have the data, but I would say.
What's your feeling towards that? Do you think?
Personal opinion is quite a few, right? Minor car deer accidents typically don't get reported. People go on their way. I know that because of our number of deer pickups. A lot of times we'll go to a dead deer where that deer.
So that's where I was going with
that. Yeah, that dead deer might be from an accident that wasn't reported.
Yeah. When you pick up a deer, do you do a chronic wasting evaluation on it or not? Because we don't really have a problem here with
No.
it. Okay.
No, those are transported by our animal welfare in the manner that they're trained to do up to safe disposal. So yes, I mean, there are car deer accidents that I would assume don't get reported. I can't put a number on it. A lot of people, depending on their deductible, may look at their damage. I've pulled up on several where they're tying down their hood and saying, nope, I'm just tying down my hood. I don't need a report. Insurance isn't going to cover it anyways based on the year of my vehicle and what I have coverage for. So yes, they do go unreported.
Just want to understand, is the trend, it's trending upward though, is that what you said?
What we've seen is trending upward, correct. And actually, if I pull other statistics that I already had on my phone, I went back with those 10 years. I talked about the 5 years, but if you look back, 10 years for traffic crashes, if you look at 2016, we're talking 32. 32 compared to now. In 2015 is when I started. 32 to 93. There was no data for 2015 on that. So, in our calls for service on raw data for just deer related has doubled in the last 10 years. We're looking at less than 250 back in 2015 to almost 500. And since I've been here my 10 years, we've always had animal welfare. We've always gone to deer calls. It's not like we flipped a switch one day and started going to these calls for deer.
So has there been more development in the township in the last 10 years?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. They're moving. They're moving. I mean, that's a big reason we're
Human-deer interaction is my point.
Yep.
More
and
people.
More people. The deer are moving. They're on the move. That's what happens, you know, they have a 3 to 4 year lifespan in these deer. There's not a whole lot, if any, hunting that goes on in the township, and new builds come in, more development comes in, and they get moved from one place to another place, displaced, and they're running across roads, absolutely. Big reason.
Are there, what I'll call hotspots, where you have more collisions than,
So that's a very interesting question. One thing I hadn't mentioned yet was what are we doing about it, right? I looked at that data in conversations with Oakland County Road Commission. So we speak with Oakland County Road Commission because one of the things I'm fighting for, whether it works or not, is to get more deer signs on our roadways. It at least jumps the attention of someone and it slows them down, right? That's what we hope, at least. It slows them down, it makes them more aware, it's that reminder. I kind of revert it back to, if you're in a subdivision, you know it's 25 miles per hour, you know there should be kids playing, but they put that kids playing sign out. Sometimes that is a good reminder when you're in a hurry of just, hey, I need to slow down a little bit. So back to your question, looking at those hotspots, there's really not, okay? It's very hard to pinpoint that they all happen at Franklin and Corton. It'd be very easy for me to come in and, if that were the answer, tell you that. We don't see that. I do see a vast majority up Telegraph Road all the way, across Square Lake quite a bit. But if I had to narrow a hotspot, it would be Franklin Road. But it's hard for me to say that because we've only had 9 on Franklin Road between Maple and Long Lake this year, right? 9 is a lot for that road. We've had more on Telegraph and more on Square Lake, but it's a bigger roadway. There's more likely for faster cars, more cars, and you're not going to get deer signs up and down Telegraph Road. It's probably just very unlikely. We also go out with education. The education portion is not to avoid deer, because you're not going to avoid the deer, but how to manage that crash if you're going to impact a deer. We follow the state campaign of don't veer for deer. Brace yourself, don't slam on your brakes, but start to come to a stop. And just make impact with that deer staying in your lane so you don't cause greater damage to you or someone else on the roadway.
Do you, the sense that, that something can be done about this problem? If this is a problem, is your senses that this is a growing problem and something that we should nip in the bud now, or? Because there are ways to deal with it.
I think
I don't know that, and some of them are more extreme than others, but.
I think there are ways of dealing with it, of educating. Maybe I'm naive that, I see the expressions when I say we're going to put in deer signs, and the guys at the PD joke, like, are we going to put hours on what time the deer are going to cross, and how do they know where to cross at what signs?
But maybe you could
have but I do believe that if we get some information out there, some education out there, some more awareness out there, and we can slow some of these cars down. I'm not talking about lowering our speed limit, but if you're driving Franklin Road at ODark 30, maybe you don't need to be doing the speed limit. Maybe we drop it down to 40, and we're more alert for deer, things like that. We can avoid some of these.
Or a campaign to not feed them.
Yes, feeding is against the law, so that is a police issue. It's a state law. The DNR has come down. We don't allow baiting in the township.
So if one witnesses that, do they call the police?
They could, yes, and the DNR would probably handle that. We would contact the DNR. We would go out. We would show them the law. We would talk to them. We would educate them on the law. But that is an educational piece of not feeding the deer.
Yeah, that might be.
Of course, we do know that they're going to come and eat natural food out of your gardens and this and that. I see it in Rochester Hills all the time. Again, it's data. So we all know how statistics can be manipulated. In Rochester Hills, they state with their data that the increase in deer signs, the increase in these billboard signs that say, it's a high crash area for deer has slowed people down, has decreased those crashes.
Really?
Listen, if it stops 5 or 6 crashes, and the police department, we're on board with that. These are easy things that we can do that are cost effective, and if it lowers that crash rate, we're all about it, absolutely. It's not like drunk driving. We can't put extra patrol out there to look for deer, right? So we have to get creative, and if we can do it in a cost effective manner like that, we're definitely going to try.
Yeah, that would be good.
I've got a couple of questions, if I might. First of all, do you think that the increase in the car crashes is because the deer herd is getting bigger, or the habitat is getting smaller, or both?
Both.
Okay, so one or the other, it's not the, you don't think the deer herd is just starting to grow bigger than it was?
Well, I think our herd here is beginning to grow. We're not the only developing community, right? So as our community develops, we still have some good wooded areas. Other communities are also developing, and while those communities develop, these deer don't live in Bloomfield Township. They don't pay taxes. They cross the road, they cross Adams Road and go into Troy, right? It's the same thing with the Troy deer. They cross the road and come into Bloomfield. So we are, you know, I don't track them, but I would assume that as other areas develop, yeah, they are making their way north from Franklin or, you know, south from Pontiac. It's the truth of the matter.
All right, one of the other things I wanted to ask is, it may not be in your, you may not have the answer to this, but do you, any disease, deer ticks, deer Lyme disease or anything, do you see any increase in that? Or do you have any knowledge?
I don't have any of that information.
Okay, we have to ask.
I know that they're, you know, they are,
I looked up
A
some
vehicle
infectious
for
disease
those-
stuff, and we don't have there's no spiking of Lyme
Okay,
disease in our
the only other question I had, when you talk about putting signs up, deer crossing to try to slow traffic down, do you have to, because it's a road sign, do you have to have the county approve that?
the road commission has to approve and put those signs in, so
We
that.
haven't got the authority to put them
We,
in the
we
ground.
we cannot go out there. What we can do is if we can find safe locations to put our message boards out, we can go out and put message boards out. That's cost effective because we own 2 message boards, to say, you know, high deer crash area. I see them quite a bit where I live out in Rochester Hills. They're the big MDOT ones. Ours are a little bit smaller because they double as speed trailers. If we can find a safe space to put those, we can deploy those. As for the actual permanent yellow signs you're thinking of, deer crossing, yes, Oakland County Road Commission would need to approve and do that. And we've requested that they look into the data and increase or give us any of those signs.
What's the status of that request?
As I was told, I believe it was Tuesday, that they were going to pull the data and see where they would be most useful. It wasn't a hard yes, it wasn't a hard no, it was we'll look at the data and we will put them in where they're useful. My recommendation again were places like Franklin Road, right? I don't expect, if I went there and told the road commission I want 10 signs up Telegraph from 14 Mile to Square Lake, they would probably laugh at me and tell me to leave. But on a place like Franklin Road, I think it's feasible, and I think we'll have good luck with them. There's not a lot of pushback. It's not a huge request from them.
This is where, again, there's almost a little bit of a tie-in to the road thing.
100%.
Because one of the complaints that, when I brought it up many times, is that we can't, in the township, put up any of our own signage. We can't put speed limit signs, we can't put speed humps in, we can't put no right turn on, what do you call it, no through traffic. Can't do anything without the township saying that, and their answer generally is no.
Yep, I understand that full-heartedly. As the community relations officer, I get calls all the time, you need to do this, you need to do that, and I have to unfortunately refer them a lot of times to the Oakland County Road Commission, you know, explaining to them it's not something that's feasible for us to do on our own. Now, I don't mean to throw them under the bus, we have a good relationship with them. They're open to discussions. I believe that it's gonna happen, but maybe, again, I'm being naive and hopeful.
Next year? Like, when is it gonna happen?
These discussions started in the beginning of November. I got pretty solid answers on Tuesday, and I'm hoping to follow back tomorrow to see what their data says. When I spoke to them, they wanted me to pull my data as well, just to make sure that both of our data lined up. Again, there's 16 different reporting sites you can go to look at crash data. I use all of our internal. They don't have access to our internal, so they're using Office of Highway Safety Planning, TIA, different aspects of SEMCOG where the crashes are occurring.
When you get an answer, could you let us know?
Yes, as soon as I have an answer on when and where these signs are gonna go up, I'll report that back through Mr. McCready to you guys, or a memo to this committee on when and where they will be located.
Okay, unfortunately, we allocated an hour for
Not a
this
problem.
meeting, so, but what you've told us has been very helpful.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you so much.
Time out.
We do, go ahead. May he ask a question?
Yeah, all right, yeah.
There you
No,
go.
well, Officer Zoli, your community relations.
Yes.
And so is there a concern in the community relative to the balance of the number of deer versus the optimal under all these
Being completely
circumstances?
honest with you, the answer is no.
So there's no
I am not receiving calls from at my desk that say we have a community issue with deer.
And
That
you
is
would
not
be-
something that I am tackling on a day-to-day.
And you'd be the one that would hear it?
if they were calling the police to complain about the deer, I can guarantee you that every officer would jump at the option to send that to my desk.
Are you dealing with, so you're not dealing with any experts such as the DNR as to the issues involving urban deer?
Where my discussions from the DNR go back years, we have an open line of discussion, but those have all revolved around hunting. And issues that we've had with HOAs and portions of this township when it comes to hunting deer, and why the township allows hunting, what the state ties our hands with hunting, what we can ban, what we can't ban, how we're going back to the roads, how we're different than cities, and how the cities have different authorities to ban hunting. Those have been my discussions when it comes to deer, and my discussions with the DNR, not the
Nuisance.
not the nuisance, not the eating of my plants, not the, occasionally we get the calls, they're stuck in a backyard, they'll hop a fence they can't get out of.
And there's no other township department that deals with deer per se, other
No,
than
the
the police
pickups,
department?
the accidents, the police department takes the majority of them. The ordinance department may. We have ordinances based on fences, what fences we can and can't have, due to how that impacts the wildlife, spike fences and things like that. So they may take some complaints, but I would think that the majority, yes, would come through the police department.
And has there ever been a survey as to the number of deer per square mile or otherwise that you're aware of?
Not to my
in
knowledge,
the township? When you pick up a carcass, I mean, have you been educated as to bovine tuberculosis?
No. No, I have not. I don't speak for our animal welfare officers on the training they go through. They're the ones that majority pick
Okay,
them
we
up and
really don't
dispose
get
of them, but.
Yeah.
But
because
no,
that is a
I have
condition.
zero training. I don't
Transmits
believe
the
our
human.
police department does either.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, before you go, I want to share this with you, and I'll give it to you.
Okay.
This is the Rochester Hills Deer Data Report.
Yep.
And it nicely points out where all the strikes have,
Yeah.
or the carcasses have been picked up. And you definitely see some areas, because I'm intrigued by your thing with the signs, because I think you're absolutely right. A sign will just say, well, it's
doesn't
like-
hurt.
It's like the flashing side, you're going 35. Well,
Correct.
okay, I better slow down to 30. It doesn't hurt, and there's definitely some areas but we need to get this sort of information.
Yeah, and I can
from-
pull that for you.
from
That's a map
Bloomfield.
like I looked at today.
Okay, good. All right.
With crashes, the map, but it's very
Yeah. But there's
sporadic.
some-
There's not a giant cluster in one area or one
Yeah, but there's
intersection.
little
But you can look up and down
focuses.
up and
Yeah.
down the roads and say if we had them, if they're all up and down, like I said, we saw 9 or 10 of them up Franklin Road, it makes sense to do up Franklin Road. When you see 20 of them up Telegraph, you have to you're comparing apples to oranges, right? So it makes more sense on Franklin than it does on Telegraph. Now, if the Oak County Road Committee comes back and says, hey, where do you want these? That's something that I can 100% bring to this board or this committee and say, these are my maps, and you guys have recommendations on that, I'd be happy to do that, and then go back to the road commission. Or if the road commission says, Nick, you're right, we're gonna put them on Franklin, I can still bring you that map, and we can go back and request more. I have zero issues with that, and all we can do is ask, and I don't think it's too burdensome. We're not re-engineering roads, so I don't think it's too burdensome on them either.
Good, that's very good.
Is there a reason why Oakland County would not want to put them up? Is it
I don't know that,
financial,
I don't know
or-
that answer. I would have to assume they have to look, is there a safe spot to put that sign? Do they not block driveways coming in and out? I did travel Franklin Road looking at that. There's quite a few signs already. The foliage starts to come over into the road, so, do they have to trim some of that back? Are they gonna find locations? I don't know that answer. I can't imagine that there's a huge financial cost to a sign northbound, a sign southbound, and them to come hammer a pole in, but.
That's my point.
I don't believe so, and I don't believe there's a reason they would say no to us unless I said, we want one in a subdivision where we haven't had a crash in 20 years.
Yeah.
I think that's where they would be like, yeah, we draw the line.
Well, then you'd have 100% quality assurance from there. That's
There you go.
a way to get your statistics.
There you are.
All right, before we adjourn, though, I want to open this up to public comment
Thank
on
you.
this subject, on deer, if anybody wants to talk about it. Then you have to come up here and give your name. Got to do it formally. Name and address, and we have 3 minutes.
My name is Richard Graham. I live in Meadow Lake Farms, right around the Maple and Inkster. I kind of think I'm ground zero for the deer problem. And I've been talking to Mike McCready via email, and I talked to the Board of Trustees, I guess, in the spring, because I was wondering what the township was doing about this problem. So I'm very glad that there's a committee now looking at these issues, and really that's all I would like to say. I mean, I have a lot I can say, but I think what you covered tonight with the deer vehicle incursions was good. I mean, that's just one aspect of it, but I'm here to tell you that, you know, despite not having statistics, I've lived here for 20 years, and the number of deer that I've seen, and I do back up to the Rouge River area, has increased tremendously. I mean, I think in the 20 years ago, I would see maybe a half a dozen in a week, and now I see a couple dozen a day. So it's unsustainable, the deer population. And that's what I really would like the township to look at, because I don't think it's going to get any better. I think it's going to cause all kinds of new problems down the road. And yeah, they're doing a lot of damage to my yard, to my neighbors' yards. You know, they're taking the fun out of living in the community. And just one other comment. I mean, I guess you talked about development. I mean, really, this area's been fully developed, more or less, for the last, I don't know, how many decades. I mean, I think the deer population is just increasing. And, you know, I think that's what we need to look at, is how we can stem this population and decrease it. And I guess that's really all I have to say, so.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
That
Come,
helps.
come to these meetings regularly.
Yeah, no, I'm very interested in it.
Good.
And I'm interested in hearing
And say what you have to
different
say.
people have
Yeah.
to say about it, so.
Good,
This
thank
was
you.
helpful tonight.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to close the public hearing then, public comment, excuse me, and bring it back to the committee, excuse me. John?
Yeah, I wanted to thank Ms. Boland for addressing the research materials that she sent out. I think there was one other resource that I found that I don't believe was otherwise sent out, and that was the City of Kalamazoo, a study that was done in 2022. And I found that to be extremely informative by way of background, and covered many different concerns and addressed so much. I have a copy of same, and I may leave it with Ms. Boland to disseminate to the group. In addition, there too, I've been provided with discussing this with a friend, what is the whitetail deer and urban conflict policies and procedures of the Department of Natural Resources. And so I have a call into the DNR Wildlife Division. They're busy this week. Obviously, we know gun season starts on Saturday. So I don't know if this is the latest version, but I believe it is, and I'd like to also tender that for distribution to the committee members by way of background information. In other words, these concerns, I'll refer to them as concerns as opposed to problems, because we're beginning with that premise, I believe, have been looked at in many Michigan communities as well as outside the state of Michigan. And so there's been a lot of science, there's a lot of data, various approaches, and I think that by looking at these types of materials, it will give us a lot of insight to hopefully ultimately provide to our township leaders a recommendation and in an ultimate report. Thank you.
Anybody else have any Okay, then we need a motion to adjourn?
We can do the mission statement at
No,
all?
we're gonna
Okay.
hold that off. We're
Yeah, we're
over
running late.
already, so.
Very complicated, very complicated.
All right,
Next time.
Support.
motion, we're adjourned then, I guess,
Okay,
huh?
adjourned, yeah.
All right, thank you all.